it's nice to see you, Wendy. You had a very important role at the beginning of this, so this will be nice, I'm sure, to see it at this point. So,
I think by and large, in my side of the shop, which is focused on acquisition of properties to protect throughout the county, that we are really relying on the goal that we've had for a while, which is if we continue to protect large connected landscapes, they're going to be more resilient to changes in climate. They're going to allow animals to move where it's cooler or where there's water if they run out of those resources where they are. So that's been our primary goal for a long time, but now I think we're really focusing more on making sure that we've got not just large landscapes, but ones that have topographic diversity, habitat diversity, and can meet some of the functional needs of what a healthy ecosystem would have.
that's great. Thank you.
So I'm Marianne, I'm with Sonoma Land Trust. My experience with climate adaptation, I'm new to the Land Trust, so I haven't done much here, but in the past I've worked with the Yellowstone Yukon Conservation Initiative to prioritize lands for biodiversity conservation under different climate scenarios.
I'm Judy Rosales, and I'm with the Coast Ridge Community Forests. And just briefly, when I think of adaptation as opposed to mitigation, I think of just changing people's behaviors. And through the forestry work that we're doing, similar to what, I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Wendy.
Wendy, you know, on a smaller scale, working. One of the things that we have a member right now who is using grazing as a means for, you know, adapting to some of the practices that we're using in our community forests.
Terrific. And could you say your name again?
Judy Rosales.
Judy, thank you.
I'm Earl Cummings. I'm a retired bureaucrat with a background in Fish and Game, State Water Board, Department of Water Resources, retired from a position in Division of Flood Management in Environmental Compliance Analysis and Planning, and I used to work at the Flood Operations Center during floods, so I'm sensitive to the increasing of emergency preparedness in your little rainbow here. I'm now on the board of the Sonoma Resource Conservation District.
Excellent, thank you. And your name is Earl?
Earl.
Great.
But it's spelled with me on both ends.
Oh, nice. Excellent. Thanks, Earl.
I'm Arthur Dawson. I used to work at the Sonoma Ecology Center as a historical ecologist, and I'm pursuing similar work with Baseline Consulting, which is my own independent business. And I've heard, like Lisa McKelly, talk a lot about, you know, downscaling the climate and what it means for the county. And I've spent a lot of time in research looking into historical hydrology and historical vegetation. And so what it makes me think of is for the future, like restoring some of these, either restoring or mimicking some of the hydrological patterns from the past could really help recharge groundwater and habitat for the future, make us more resilient. And I also have concerns about just the long-term trend in our, it's been toward less of a mosaic in forests. Like, you know, the evidence I've looked at looks like there was, you know, forest chaparral and grassland was, you know, not evenly divided, at least more evenly divided than it is now. Now we're losing chaparral, in particular in grassland, and getting more forest. And so how that can inform the future for how we manage the land. Condos, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm Fred Ufrat.
Hi, Fred.
Hi. I'm a forester and doing consulting forestry. I teach at SRJC. I teach forestry. And I'm a hydrologist and watershed management specialist.
Excellent. And climate change in your world, have you been?
Climate change in my world is, I watch the Doug fir die when they're on rocky ridges. I watch Doug fir outcompete other species in drought stress. I see SOD slowing down, sudden oak death. I see streams that are at a really super low level, lower than I've ever seen them. I have a lot of concern about the aquatic life and the life in the hypolumian underneath the stream. And I'm concerned about flushing flows when the rains really do come, because we've had all this activity, this anthropic turbidation of the soil as well as natural, so that when we get the next gully washer, it will indeed be a gully washer.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kim Batchelder. I work with the Sonoma County Agricultural Preservation and Open Space District. And the district is very involved with climate change. And from a professional perspective, I really appreciated this transition from global warming, which always people think, oh, well, who doesn't want a warmer Earth, to the idea of climate change. Because that really is the impetus of the impacts of Sonoma County. Because it's not only going to be warmer temperatures, but it's also going to be really flashy events, storm events, huge El Niños, and having effects across the landscape in such a dramatic way. And it's not just about the temperature change, but it's all related. I think the district is very involved with establishing where we are baseline-wise with the vegetation mapping process of taking in new data like LiDAR to be able to get us a better sense of what things look like today and how to be able to analyze how things change over time. Also, the funding sources are requesting us when we get into a matching grant situation. Funders are asking us to make sure we're looking at those factors and how the systems that we're protecting are connected and maybe be more resilient to climate change.
That's great, thank you. And I'm gonna go back over here and
Oh, Stephen Swain, UC Cooperative Extension cameraman for a day.
Great. And any other thoughts about climate change while we have you?
Lots. But
In 20
how do we make
seconds or
it?
so.
Yeah, exactly, 10 seconds or so.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen a lot of the same things that Fred was referencing before, and I'm seeing a lot of introduction of exotic pests, and I think that we're going to, I'm looking for spaces that, stress trees tend to be less resilient to pest pressure, and so I'm expecting that we will be and although I have no idea how we would actually measure this, that with increased environmental stress and exotic pests, we're going to have some really interesting times ahead for Sonoma County forests. Enough said.
Great, thank you.
What
Amy, what would you add?
Amy Chestnut with Sonoma Land Trust, and I would just add that we are not going to conserve or sequester ourselves out of this situation, and so I think land conservation is a very small component of our facility, and I'd really love to look toward behavior changes in consuming, and the way that connects with our forests here, as well as our food and farm systems, is local and keeping things local and the local economy vibrant and alive, but thoughtful in the ways we consume.
That's great, thank you. And we'll skip back to you, Camille.
Hi, Camille Armstrong. I'm taking the Leadership Institute class this year, and they mentioned this was happening, and so I'm very delighted to be here. And we've heard from Caitlin, so just want to learn more.
Great, thanks, Camille. Yes, please.
I'm Ellen McKnight. I live in Glen Ellen. I'm just an ordinary citizen.
Those are the most important kind.
I don't have any titles you guys have. I'm a hiker, and I'm concerned about my little 2 acres of forest. I've been lost 7 oak dead, 3,600 foot oak trees. It's been a disaster on my property.
3,600, you said?
Huh?
3,600?
3,600 foot
Okay.
oak trees. And I have drainage problems. I have uncooperative neighbors who think they're exempt from the laws of nature and the laws of Sonoma County. And I don't know, I just want to do what I can to help out. So I'm here to learn.
Thanks for being here.
And she's a new grandmother again.
I have 2 grandchildren to make sure that the world is still the same for them. They're our age.
I'm gonna skip back over here and then come back.
Bob Neal, Stewardship Director at Sonoma Land Trust, and I guess my role as a Stewardship Director makes me an unordinary citizen because everything that Ellen said, I think we face, because we're also private landowners, largely relative to climate change. I think the things that our stewardship team thinks about around land management issues have to do with functionality, retaining or restoring ecosystem functionality to our lands, and also then sustainability across our human efforts as well, agricultural sustainability and viability in concert with ecologic sustainability and viability, and with those things then leading towards the concept of resilience. And so we're looking at how we manage our lands through those two lenses. We want to have functionalities, and we want to do management activities that retain or improve our resilience for climate change.
Great, thank you, Bob.
I'm Drew Ledenville. I'm with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and my main role is working with private landowners to provide technical and financial assistance for the practices that will help towards climate resiliency. And that could be many different things, and we're many different land uses. But yeah, so I really hope that what we can do is provide some initiative or incentive for people to do things on the land.
My name is Zach Anaya. I work with the Wildlands Conservancy at the General Headlands Preserve here on the coast. And my experience with climate change adaptation is twofold. I've been working in the forest sector doing vegetation management to help kind of reduce the number of small diameter trees, because as we know, as our temperatures increase, we have less ability to kind of sustain those numbers that are exceeding what we've seen in the past and what we know we have available for these long-term droughts we're seeing. And in addition to that, the second part of what I've been doing is working with organizing public outreach and doing guided hikes to kind of inform people about this and what we're doing to change.
That's great, thank you. And, well, did we?
I didn't
think you said this, yeah.
I'm Dee Swanheiser, and I represent Green Belt Alliance today. I think that having the focus of having the lines around the built environment so that the people have stay as much as we can inside the already built environment is really a key to helping us attain a balance for the climate change that's going to be coming. We also work on the outside of the line with all of our colleagues in all the things that people have already said. I think that I also personally have a philosophy that's very similar to E.O. Wilson's, that we really have to save half the planet, and we have enough time to do that, we better get on it. So the idea of our linkages, of the protections, of the connectivity for the plants and animals is really a key component. And I also want to just say that I personally have a little, I'll just stop, she waved.
I haven't had to start doing antics yet.
I'm Penny Sirota. I'm here with Friends of the Northwest Watershed, and so we're a group that's trying to organize landowners to act collaboratively and to help people understand what resources are available. And on the land that I live on, we're just really trying to understand the hydrology and to understand what kind of actions we can take to help to keep the water on the landscape and increase infiltration, what kinds of small things we can do with the way that we're growing food to really take advantage of the water that's there, and what we can do to get our forests to be less prone to devastating fire.
I'm Brooke Edwards. I work for the Wildlands Conservancy, and I manage the General Headlands Preserve. I work with Zach, and we own and manage a property that was purchased by the Sonoma Land Trust back in 2009. It is a large landscape, topographically diverse, diversity of habitats. And a couple of initiatives that we're moving forward with is forestry restoration work, trying to transition these young, commercially harvested forests to a more mature forest ecosystem. So we'll have bigger trees, specifically redwood trees, that can sequester carbon over hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And then the other initiative is shaded fuel break work up on strategic ridge lines where we have a road system to try to reduce those fuel loads so that if and when we do have a fire sweep through the surrounding community, our forests will be more resilient to some kind of catastrophic wildfire.
Great, thank you.
I'm Ariel Potashnik, I'm with the Sonoma Land Trust, and I'm relatively new to Sonoma County, so I'm really eager to hear everyone's perspective on the local impacts of climate change that you're seeing. But in the past when I've thought about adaptation, I've really been kind of thinking about it more at a global level and about how adaptation is so important for the people in the world who have benefited least really from the industrial revolution that caused climate change, but are now going to be seeing the biggest impacts on their lives. But at a somewhat more micro level, I think it's really interesting to be in a place like Sonoma County that has a fair amount of resources compared to even other counties in California, and to have this opportunity for us to kind of pioneer adaptation strategies on a local level that hopefully then we can export to people who have less.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and I hear that there's kind of a variety of interests in the room, which is really fantastic. I mean, everything from residential landowners or people who represent residential landowners to folks who are land managers of larger properties. I hear that there's interest in the changing of behaviors, or you're really seeing that there's this connection to our ability to adapt. I'm also hearing that there's a strong interest in the hydrology of climate change in a way, or how we kind of have a thriving hydrology, as well as there's a lot of on-the-ground sightings of the changes that are happening, which is really interesting. So that's a really good place to start from. It sounds like you have a lot to teach us, and we're really happy to be here. We have some documents that are kind of our summary of how we're thinking about climate adaptation in Sonoma County. And are you up for kind of walking us through that, maybe using the roadmap, and then we can refer to the others we need to?
Yep. Yeah, so what we want to do is kind of bring you along with where our thinking has been, and then we want you to dive in and contribute your expertise so that we can make these products as realistic and far-reaching as possible. So I need to borrow one of those. Thank you. I'm not going to talk about the first few pages of this very much, but these are just the very, very, very highlights of the vulnerability assessment, climate vulnerability assessment that NBCI did for NBCI, and it's also forming the basis for the chapter. The county's doing a climate action plan. It's got a chapter on climate adaptation, and that chapter is derived from the vulnerability assessment that NBCI did. So that's the first couple of pages.
And just to pause there, you can see that the climate futures, whether we have high emissions or mitigated emissions, we're looking at either hot and dry, or hot and wet, or warm and dry, and warm and wet. And that's sort of where we're heading. Although that has definitely some nuances, like more extremes, different types of freezing in the winter and summer, or different temperatures in the summer. So that's kind of the big piece. And then
I'm kind of assuming that you guys are kind of up to speed on the basic climate hazards that are facing us. I mean, where they've summarized them in this little tiny table at the bottom. Yeah. And then break them down. On the next few pages, those same hazards are broken down. There's a page on how these hazards will affect people and social systems. And then the next page is those effects on built systems. And the next page is effects on natural and working elements, which is where most of it is spend most of our time. So if you read through this list on natural and working lands, you will see a lot of things that you've already mentioned in this room. And it's really easy to spend a lot of time talking about those things. So I'm kind of trying not to talk about those things for a lot of time today, since we don't have a lot of time. because we want to talk to you about what to do about it. So the first little piece of what to do about it is summarized in this graphic. So, at the bottom of the pyramid, these graphics, the bottom of the pyramid is where you want to spend most of your resources because that's actually addressing the causes of the problem. The base of the pyramid with climate, of course, is reduce emissions. Stop making the problem worse. So yes, go mitigation, go sequestration. Without that, we all can look forward to a very unhappy future. But in addition to that, we also need to be working on the smaller parts of the pyramid, which is we know these changes are in motion, they're coming, they're here. And I think what a lot of us in this room are focused on is the stuff that's kind of in the middle of this pyramid, the resilience of the system. Because what we want to avoid is having to spend even more resources at the top of the pyramid, which is when there's a catastrophe. And working on forests basically is working, pretty close to the bottom of the pyramid. And that's a good thing. So and I'm just zipping through this, I'm sorry it's so fast. But, so now if you would look at the next page, the goals for adaptation. This is our working structure for a climate resilience plan. We're calling it a roadmap. Calling it a roadmap for climate resilience in Sonoma County. These are very broad goals. They're cross-sector. And we would love to have your input on these if you have any thoughts about major things that you see that are missing or that you think are overemphasized. And we'll have, in the course of our conversation here, more time to dig into these a bit. What we want to do with you is to dig into how forest issues can and should serve these goals. If you look at these goals, of course they're very broad, there are a number of different kinds of actors who can do stuff to further these goals. So there's actors. There's also the actions that they take. There's also different kinds of benefits from those actions. What we're finding is that most actions that are taken for climate resilience have multiple benefits beyond just climate resilience, which is a really good thing. Helps it sort of makes it easier to sell and promote those actions, but it also kind of muddies the waters a bit. An example is reducing fire risk in forests is very clearly a climate adaptation action. It also has a benefit of, or if it's done right, of improving biodiversity, which is not exactly a climate adaptation issue, but it's a co-benefit. So we are trying to produce a document called A Roadmap for Climate Resilience for Sonoma County that describes who the different actors are, what the most important actions are that they can take, and what some of the benefits and co-benefits are. And that's why we want to talk to you. So next, I want to go to this graphic, the colorful one. So we came up with this graphic to try to make it a little more clear how we see a range of actors in the colored people down there at the bottom. Those are the different kinds of actors. We have sort of categories that we put different actors in: government, business, households, NGOs, etc. These different actors have different kinds of actions that they're particularly poised to take. We're thinking of that as levers. Like every kind of actor has different levers they can pull. If you're PRMD, you have the general plan. If you're an NGO, you have your donors. Or if you're a land trust, you have the properties that you take care of. And then across, so the idea is that these different actors take actions that move us along with our goals toward a better place, the shiny, happy place. A resilient, healthy, secure Sonoma County.
And this vision is actually what's used in our general plan. I mean, it's that broad and also something that's very commonly used.
Yeah, that language that's there under vision is actually from, it's like the first sentence in the county general plan. It's a little grammatically awkward, but it covers all the territory. So we're just trying to show that this is one of our big messages, is that climate adaptation actions have a lot of other benefits, and they get us to the kind of community that we all want to live in and that we want our kids to grow up in and that sort of thing. So we would like to talk to you specifically about the kinds of actions that you think are most important for forestry and forests. Not just by you, the kind of actors who are in the room, but other kinds of actors too. You've been thinking about the complex issues facing forests for a long time. So what really rises to the top? What are some near-term actions that could be very effective? And what are some maybe longer-term, more systemic actions that need to be taken? And why are those the most important ones? There are so many actions that are relevant to climate resilience. We don't want to talk about all of them in this roadmap. We can't, and it will just be an overwhelming flood. So we really want to grab on to the kinds of actions that will be most effective or that have the most common benefits, the ones that we can all get kind of behind and promote over time. And what we're coming up with for the roadmap will end up in the county's climate action plan, and also NBCI and many others will be taking those actions forward outside the county's plan. The county's plan is only going to talk about government actions. So that's, especially for forests, in many ways that's kind of a subset. So we definitely want you to be coming up with actions that need to be taken by people outside this room. Okay,
Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I've got something to start with, is thinking about the idea of connectivity.
Yes.
So that we can really understand how.
She's getting out the Post-its.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to be able to collect.
Yeah, what are the most important places to make sure that we've got wildlife passage as animals are going to need to move to different places to be able to get their needs. So that's one aspect.
Yeah.
Do you want to describe how
And that's really difficult for like a private landowner to understand.
Right.
Really need a big view for that.
So it's wildlife connectivity.
As well as hydrological connectivity, that's another aspect of it. That's really,
And they're often the same thing because creek corridors and.
yeah.
Right. Well, so this is a really big topic, and I think if we have a few comments right now that might help people think about this, I think that would be good. But my thought was, I actually thought it would be interesting to assign goals. We have 17 people in the room, so assign goals and have you talk about it. Like, what is needed from a forestry perspective to further this goal? And it might be a little bit of a wonky fit, and we're only going to spend 5 minutes on it. So see if you can come up with something, get your brain going. And if you come up with any action, like connectivity is that's a perfect one, go ahead and write it on a Post-it note, just like this, so somebody could read it. Like us afterwards. And we'll see if that kind of gets our brains going a little bit on that. Are you guys up for experimenting with this in that way?
And should we prime the pump with some of the thoughts that we've had in the past on forestry? Like from this?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, so we did just, I don't know, a couple months ago, we were just trying out this graphic, like how would we do this with the group? And we just decided to talk about forestry, just, I don't know how that happened exactly. But there were some ideas that came up just to see if you think these rise to the top, take them or leave them. Using best practices to manage fuel loads. Maintain and expand healthy stream buffers. On the sort of economic side, there were things like pay a fair wage for forestry jobs, participate in job creating for forestry. One of the goals here is to mainstream the use of climate projections in management and not just expect the future to be like the past. So, one of the actions that was brainstormed was that forest managers should use the climate projections that have been created by NBCI and others. And then there was one about defensible space. About the regulations related to defensible space, and the note is not really clear enough for me to say exactly what the action was. But those are just some ideas that have come up, and you will have others. So what we're looking for on your Post-it is, yes, things as broad as connectivity, but who? Who should do what? What do you think the most effective thing would be to do? What are the kinds of actors and specific actions and and their leverage, what is their leverage?
Right,
To
so
actually get that
government could, around connectivity, government could incentivize connected properties. I'm really just brainstorming, but something like that. It could be other actors, or it could be the forestry community as well. So, like I said, it's a little bit of an experiment. We'll see what you come up with. But I'm gonna go ahead and, if you need to, because I think there's several folks that are in the same organization who are sitting together, so you feel free to move yourself around if you want to, but at this point I'm just going to make some groups. So goal 1 right here, goal 2 right there, goal 3 right there, goal 4, the 2 of you together, goal 5, the 2 of you, goal 6, goal 7, and I think we'll, is there anybody, what's that? Do you call me 6 or 6? I think we'll just go with 7. Let's go with those for the moment. So we're going to skip goal 8. That way we have 2. All right, so take 5 minutes and brainstorm. I'll walk around.